All right, on to Hive Hierarchy. And Hive Hierarchy is what is important to the colony that you can manipulate and you can do and work with the bees. There's things you can do. If you work against them, they're just going to completely come around 180 degrees and do what they still want. So everybody knows me. I'm not going to go through that. The importance of everything within the colony is each component that's utilized. So we have brood, bee bread, the queen, drones, nectar, and everything has an importance level. What you're trying to do, you're trying to be sustainable. Again, the sustainability part of this is so you have everything you need within your own colony. Connors wrote the 2.5. It's called 2.5 Hive. The theory of it is because you're stealing Peter to pay Paul, and it's called equalization. You're trying to get both colonies, and you'll really see this when you start seeing other people's colonies, or we go out to the apiary. Some colonies will be weak and with tons of brood. Other colonies will be overrich with tons of resources. And what you're trying to do, you're trying to equalize them out to be sustainable. Identification is key. Knowing what you're looking at, that you look at it, you instantly say that frame is at least 1/2 or 2/3 of this. And then when you call frames out, when you really work with a lot of bigger beekeepers, even yourself, get used in your head that you're going to say, this is a brood frame. This is open brood. These are eggs. And when you start to build nukes or equalize your colonies out, you know what's on that frame. You don't have to go back and go, okay, let me see that frame again and pull it back out. Remember, every time you're opening up that colony, you have an extent of time. If you have gentle bees, you might have a half hour. Do not be afraid that the first time you do a hive inspection, it might take you an hour and a half because everybody's being very slow, very gentle. You know, you don't want to kill your bees. You don't want it to run and get stung. I mean, there's tons of things going through your head. After a year and a half of it, you're going to be able to pull it up, pull the first frame, outside frame, shift things over and go, oh, 20 minutes, I'm done. So, but identification. A frame of brood. So I have 2/3 of everything on this frame. I have over 80%. I do have capped honey in the corners, but this is a brood frame. It's capped brood. So I know instantly that these girls are going to emerge. If this is on both sides, which it was, I have 8,000 on per side, 16,000 workers that are going to come out and overpopulate this colony. That's why you'll see down below a frame of foundation. What do nurse bees do? They draw wax out beautifully. So put it right beside them. Let them come out, let them start secreting wax, and let them build your colony up. The queen. You got a worker and we're drones. Those are the three. For you guys that are going to do honey, don't worry about this drone population. But for you guys that are doing honey, your drone population is the thing that you can take the drone or the scraper and scrape it through. You can take a toothpick, your hive tool, pick those drones out and see what your varroa load is. Don't be afraid of using the green drone comb. It's an easy way to, without chemicals or anything else, you can put it in your hive. You can control your varroa load without introducing any harsh chemicals or even natural chemicals to your bees. But you're eliminating all the drones. Once you get into queen rearing and you start to raise your own colonies, then we have to reverse that psychology. But for right now, your drones don't mean anything to you. The most critical thing in a colony is brood. I can try and take a frame and shake all the bees off, take that frame of brood, put it back on top, and the nurse bees will run to it. They absolutely want to feed. The eggs, not so much. But once they turn on and come into that young larval stage, the most important thing to a colony is to feed. These nurse bees want to regurgitate that royal jelly and feed this brood. The most important thing to you is to manipulate that is, like I talked to you when we talked a single box. That single box gets to that 78% or 70 to 80%. You want the bees to come up to the second box. Again, like some of you talked about, put a feeder up top and pull a frame of brood, if not 2 frames of brood, into that second box. Put foundation in the lower slot where you pulled it out of, assemble the bottom, take the 2 frames of brood and put it right above that area where it would have been below. And the bees will instantly come up to it. And now you've created a V, or that Christmas tree, where that second box will start to be pulled out, and then they'll build up from there. Pupae, very enriched. I mean, they'll stay right on that frame. You won't see as many nurse bees, and you won't see as many bees on it, because these have got a microenvironment when it's capped, and they have that moisture. They have the right moisture. They have the right environment. So imagine taking your house and wrapping it in saran wrap. This little microenvironment inside, but it's still rich to the bees. If you move that around, they'll jump right on it, because when these bees come out, when she emerges as this nurse bee, her tongue, and remember the animation I showed you, they come out, and the first thing they're trying to do is communicate. They're feeding each other tongue to tongue, and they know they've had 3 different resources to put into this baby bee, so it means a lot to them. Their eggs, between worker and drone, they're all 3 eggs, both 3. The worker, her cell is capped on the 9th day. For a drone, it's the 10th day. Remember, the most important things that you guys, even if you don't remember this part up here, the eggs and larval, remember, as a pupae, all these workers of that other frame that I just showed you before, they're going to emerge on that 21st day. That means on the 21st day after that, here come all these workers. And drones are 24. Because remember, if you're going to use that green drone comb, I don't want to wait to the 27th day. That means now I have 3 times the mite population. So remember the studying on this. The second and most important is the queen. So remember the queen cups, just like a coffee cup flipped over, doesn't mean anything. It depends on the amount of bees, the population. Like I said, Russians, tons and tons of them. If I take my hive tool and crush this out, come back 24 hours later, you'll see maybe twice as many, because they want to have them back again. If you see this queen cup, like some of you in the apiary scene, when you tilt that frame, put the sun over your shoulder or use a little flashlight, if I see the royal jelly down inside with that little larvae, that means that old queen, she might still be there in this early stage, not that much royal jelly. If you see it in that very small beginning, she still might be there. If it's been nice for 4 days, she's probably already gone. But like I showed you with the one colony, you have to break everything down to find out what's going on at that point. Even if I see one of these like this, if I see that much royal jelly and I see that big fat larvae, I have to break that colony completely down. And when you guys left, I walked back out there within 5 minutes. There's the queen up in the honey super. There was tons of bees. I knew they didn't swarm. But if I would have waited a couple more days, she would have been gone. Once the cell is capped on the end, that colony, the old colony or half the colony and the old queen are probably 99% are gone. If it's been cold, wet, and rainy for 5 days, she still might be there. Another reason, break the colony all down, look for everything, If you try and see this can opening, so this little edge and this perfect opening in the end, I will promise you my life, the old queen is gone at that point, because this daughter's going to come out, and this daughter's going to pipe. She's going to go beep, 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 beep. And it sounds like I'll have to get a recording sometime. You'll hear her pipe, and when she pipes, she's looking for her other sisters, and they'll start into a battle. So if I have a colony and she emerges first, what she does, she'll crawl up on the side. She'll grab this peanut, say this queen comes out. She'll look for her sister, crawl on the outside, and she'll gyrate and make that piping sound. If she hears a sister inside, she'll chew into the sidewall right about here. She'll climb up. She'll put her stinger on the inside and sting her sister to death. And you'll see this chew mark in the side. So if you ever see chew marks in the side of the cell, that means the first queen out killed all her sisters off. If 2 of them emerge at the same time, they'll pipe and locate each other, and they'll drop to the bottom, and they'll fight in this C shape. So imagine taking 2 C's. If you put your hand in 2 C shapes, they interlock and they go to battle. What they're trying to do is kill the other one off to spread her QMP to try and save this colony. If 3 or 4 or 5 drop out at the same time, most of the other ones will start to run, and you'll see them coming out the top. They'll run out the front, and it's called after swarms. And you might have a large colony that has 3 or 4 swarms about the size of a softball or baseball that come out, and that's exactly what it'll be. It'll be virgin queens running out, and some of that colony is running out with her to try to make another colony. Again, you'll see the eggs. All prodigy, or all 3 bees that are inside, are all eggs for 3 days. The queen in the larval state goes down to 8, so she's coming out quicker, and then she's going to emerge on that 16th day. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So if you're around and doing something and you forget, if you're doing queen rearing, if you talk to any queen people who raise queens, you'll know that you're on the queens. It's a joke that you're on the queen schedule, because if I have a colony that has 40 queens in it and 1 queen emerges and I don't get out there in time, by the time I open up that colony, I'm going to have 1 queen left. She's going to slaughter all 39 sisters. So some of the details on this: 16 days to emerge, 7 to 10 days to sexually mature, 2 or 3 days in a mating flight. And remember, this is weather dependent also. So if it's bad weather for 5 days, you can add that on top of this. 7 to 14 days to start laying eggs. So every time that colony swarms and you don't catch the swarm, or you don't catch those eggs or the queen cells, their whole entire colony just went behind a month and a half to restart all over again. And then 5 to 6 weeks from egg to laying a queen, and that's in climate weather. So that whole thing has to cycle over and over and over. So for when people say that, I haven't been out in my bees, what's going on? I don't know. You have to know what's going on. Again, open brood, most important right here. This is wet brood, copious amounts of royal jelly that you can see it shining in the light. This is the sun over your shoulder looking down inside. So I know that there's tons of nurse bees. Everything's going on. There's tons of resources coming in. Everything is right. I have a queen right colony. I'm not into a queenless situation. I can build nukes. I can boost population. I can do a lot of different things with that. So that's a very important key to having a good colony. And it's the most important to the bees, right beside the queen. Cap brood again, you'll see the individual caps. This was sometimes confused with capped honey. Capped honey, though, doesn't have the individual caps on the cells. It's more of a ripple. If you turn on and see, if you've ever looked at a pond and see the wind blowing just right where it kind of ripples the top of the water, that's what capped honey looks like. That small rippling across the top, and you'll see the difference. Cap brood is pupa. You'll see the pink-eyed, purple-eyed stage leading into emergence. And sometimes if you see a frame of this, you'll actually see the cap that's been removed by a worker, and you'll see that little blonde bee coming out. Nurse bees, there'll be less bees on this frame because it's already generating its own heat because they're in that microenvironment. And you can take this, if you find a colony that's really doing well and has tons of cap brood, take that away and give it to a colony that's not. If you only have one colony, let it go. If you wanted to turn on and boost or equalize your colonies out, this is the frame that I would take to put it into another colony. But when you pull this frame, make sure double, if not triple check, is the queen on it. If so, pick up the queen or shake the bees off, or take your bee brush, shake her back down into the hive, shake her back down into the hive, and then turn on and use that frame. Oh. Somebody's phone. Nope, went the wrong way. My fault. Hive hierarchy for the queen. The next queen underneath that is the queen herself. Her QMP, or her queen mandible pheromone. If you look at the bees down here in this circle, this is called the queen in her court. All these nurse bees are cleaning her every time she lays an egg. If she takes a rest, the front bee is regurgitating royal jelly. she secretes an oil from her mandible pheromones up front and along her body that smells. There's like 80 plus different compounds. So let's just say hive A, for us to understand it, let's say she smells like cherries. Hive B smells like apples. That colony, these workers right around here will clean that oil. They'll mimic that smell. And these house bees or nurse bees walk around, they're spreading that smell that, yes, we have a good laying queen. She smells good. She's healthy and everything's going well. Plus this queen, when she walks around, she's spreading that oil from her abdomen plates underneath. And as she's walking, she's spreading this across all the frames of brood. Virgin queens will do the same thing. When they try to take over a colony, they'll run around. They'll run much, much faster, but they're trying to spread that QMP to say they're the ones that are trying to take over this colony. And then the bee in the rear end, as she does her restroom break, this one cleans it up and takes it out also. So everything in this healthy bee, if her antenna's broke, they'll supersede her. They'll cut her in half. They'll cut her wings off, cut her between the abdomen and thorax, and carry her out the front door and raise a new queen. So that is vitally important to see that and have a nice, healthy queen. The nurse bees, very, very important on top of this. 3 to 7 days, they're going to feed the older larvae. So every week of their life, something is changing in their metabolism, the way they mature, and what they're doing inside the colony. So from day 3, when they first emerge, they're cleaning their own bedroom. So from the cell that they came out of, they're going back down inside and polishing that cell for the next queen to lay an egg, for that queen to lay an egg inside. 3 to 7 days, they're feeding royal jelly. So they're feeding the older, because their mandibles, think about taking a saltine cracker and putting it in just the edge of your mouth, how your mouth starts to secrete. It's not the best royal jelly, so they're feeding older larvae first. 7 to 10 days, once the vitogelin in their head really starts to kick in and it's really producing tons of good royal jelly, then they're going to feed the queen, because they want the richest, best taste, and the young larvae. So they're feeding that back to the baby bees. Now think of this, every bee or every larvae inside is visited 10,000 times during their development. So every bee, so imagine having a spoonful of royal jelly, of saliva, what we had, and feeding this baby 10,000 times to get her to develop to the full size. That's tons of visits. And remember, every day that's going by, that nurse bee is getting older. So she goes through her whole life cycle. There has to be another division or another version of that queen laying 1,500 to 2,000 eggs every day. So it's a constant workforce that needs to be fed, needs to have riches, needs to have protein, needs to have resources. The older field bees, at that point, then we start getting into house bees that can't produce because the vitogelin in their head, it starts to shrink. So think of a grapevine. If you've seen a grapevine where it goes out, all these little clusters at the ends look like grapes. And an older field bee, when you dissect the bees, those little grape chunks start to dry up. And then they revert into field bees. The only thing they're good is out for foraging, getting nectar, getting pollen, and bringing stuff in. If I steal, or something would happen to the colony where all the nurse bees, let's say a disease like European foul brood, started to affect all the nurse bees, all of a sudden the field bees can revert back and feed the young larvae, but it's not that nutrient rich. They can produce it, but they cannot give it 100%. So when you do a split, and this is vital in a split, when I do a split, I want to make sure I have tons of nurse bees in hive A and tons of nurse bees in hive B. I don't want to just take frames of tons of all cat brood and make a split, because when they emerge and they have to feed, they're not going to turn around and be able to feed. The foragers are not going to be able to feed all those young babies. So remember, when we equalize out, we want all the different resources equalized in both hives. The house bees are all the construction workers. They build the comb, and you can see all the different stuff. And they're usually the ones that are doing the air conditioning on the front. So we get to that 90 plus degrees. All of a sudden you go to your colony and you just hear this loud buzz. They're usually bearding out the front, and you'll see bees that are just sitting there beating their wings and creating that swamp cooler and cooling off the colony. Also, if the colony's going to swarm or do anything, you'll see those are the bees that are on the inside fanning frame to frame to frame. You'll also see this is if you take your colony and you're working your colony too long, say it's taking you 45 minutes to do your hive inspection, you'll look on the top bars of the colony of the box that you're in, and all the bees have their heads down, their butts up, and they're fanning. They're trying to fan and get all these pheromones back inside the colony to equalize again. And then you're going to hear that queenless roar. As the bees start to get agitated, they're going to get louder and louder and louder, telling you that something's going on. Do not be afraid of putting the colony back together and just calling it a day at that point. The field bees are the bees that are that 14 to 21 days old. They usually go out for pollen foraging. Day 21 and over, those are the nectar girls that go out. Remember, honey is not bee throw up. It is actually, it's like a cow. They have two stomachs. They have a honey crop. They have a sphincter in between that they can close off. When they go out and tanker in nectar, it's about twice their body weight. They drink it in, they fill up, and then they go out, they come back, they regurgitate that to a house bee, and then they go back again. So a lot of this stuff is original. From the original hive, they'll go out about that 2 miles. But if you don't have anything in that area, in that 2 miles, they're going out that 4 and 5. So if you're a bee and you have your resources, do you want it to be, so think about when you're hungry, do you want your resources around to the corner market? Or for us, imagine flying at 15 miles an hour all the way to Fort Wayne or Toledo to go get food. So you want tons of different things. Again, hive placement, what's in your area, what can you do, and if all else, you're going to emergency feed. And they cannot revert back to being a nurse bee. At that point, their entire vitogelin system or their saliva system is completely shot. They cannot convert back. Drones. For you guys on this, your drones mean nothing to you, but they contribute to the colony. If I open up a colony and I see tons of drones on that second, let's just say an 8-frame box, on that 1 and 2 frame and that 7 and 8 frame, if I open up my colonies early in the morning and I see tons of drones, that also tells you that this colony is being equalized. I'm getting tons, and I have tons of good nurse bees because the boys can go in any colony they want, hive A, B, C, D, E, all the way to double Z, and they can turn around and be fed. I know by the look of my colonies or my drones on the inside, if I see tons of drones, that means the drones are going to the best hotel or the best colony to be fed by the nutrient-rich nurse bees. So if I have tons of drones in there and you're not raising drones for drones, I know I have a good reproduction of this colony is able to feed. I have good nurse bees and everything else. The next important best thing for the colony is pollen. This is a late pollen frame because it's all this dulled yellow, brown. It's a muted color. In the springtime, you're going to see the direct opposite. You're going to see bright reds, yellows, dead nettle, purple, eastern red bud. You'll see like a teal. So you'll see tons and tons of colors. But in this late fall is when the asters, the goldenrod come out. It's a muted color. But a pollen frame is very important to a colony because that's what they're going to see. You'll see these shiny areas where the bees take the pollen. When they take a little pollen BB, they put it inside the cell. They take their heads and ram it, and they actually close it off and get that air gap out. And when they do that, when it's completely full, they take a layer of a layer of honey and put on the top. Between the honey and the pollen, it starts to ferment and it makes bee bread. And think of this as like a viscosous people call it goo, that it's fermenting up, it's making this slimy substance. That's what the nurse bees are collecting and feeding workers. And that's what that also, it's a protein. So it's essential of life. It's coated. Also remember here, down here, it's a magnet for wax moth and hive beetle. If I have an entire frame like this and my population, either they swarmed, I did something wrong and killed the queen, I put on too many boxes and the bees can't defend it, the wax moth and the hive beetle are going to find this first. The mature female of either the wax moth or the hive beetle are going to shove in their oval depositor, and they're going to deposit up to 1,000 eggs. And then this colony is going to get overrun. If you ever open up this frame and find little tiny white larvae crawling on it, so think of little tiny white maggots. If I open this up and find little tiny pinholes, or I find maggots crawling on this, pull this frame up, put it in a Ziploc bag, stick it in a freezer, and seal it for at least 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours. And then give it back to the bees and see if they can consume it and get it used up. If it's really slimy, if it's, you see wax moth, that webbing all over it, take it out, chuck it, burn it, whatever you need to do. But this is a magnet for those things on a colony that's weak or stressed.
Jamie, when you take that out of the freezer, about how long should you wait to put it back in the hive? Is it like an hour or two? Or
I would wait if you had time. I mean, you could pull that frame and freeze it and leave it out for a day.
Okay.
And the bees aren't going to put burr comb in between there. I mean, it's
okay.
not, you don't have to have something in that gap. But after the 5th and 6th day, I would, or get into and this is completely up to you. If I pull that frame of pollen, I take a frame of foundation to shove it back in. Because I am a procrastinator, all of a sudden H&R Block gets busy or something happens and I forget about it. And then I go in there 7 days later and the bees have burr combed 2 or 3 frames together. But if you're the type of person that says, hey, I'm going to pull this, I'm going to freeze it, I'm going to pull it out 24 hours later, let it thaw out and stick it back in, and you're good at that, and you can do that. But I wouldn't leave it more than 5 to 7 days, because that's all of a sudden they call it festooning. The bees will turn on, take that gap. It looks like monkeys in a barrel. They'll all hook legs, they'll measure that gap, and then they'll start pulling out burr comb in between. And then when you go to pull the one frame, you're actually pulling 3 frames at the same time. And then everything in between, as you pull that frame, it's tearing, all that honey's dripping down in, and you can potentially kill your queen. If you look at the frame of honey on this one, look how it's jagged. Remember I talked about the wind blowing across the water? This is what you're going to see. I don't see individual cells, that octagon of the cells of all the workers. Sometimes you'll see this nice white capping. Sometimes it'll be a little bit browner than that. But it's usually they're going to cap it, and they're going to cap it at 18.1%. And we'll get into honey in this next talk. But at 18.1, if there's more moisture than that at that time, it's going to ferment. And can anybody tell me what fermented honey, what the drink is?
Mead.
Mead. MEAD.
So do you need a refractometer, Jamie, or can you just, which is like anywhere from $80 to $500? Is it helpful to have a refractometer, or can you just tell by looking at it like this?
As a beginner, you don't go out and buy these tools right off the bat. If I had a frame and this whole entire frame was capped like this, I know these bees easily by 17% have capped it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
As long as that frame is just like this and it's in the colony, the bees will keep that moisture content because they keep it nice and dry. They control the humidity, they control the temperature. This will stay stable for years. The only thing it will do is it'll start to crystallize. Real honey at some point will crystallize. and then the bees will turn on and use it. If I take this frame out of the colony and I stick it in my garage, honey is hygro with a G, hygroscopic. It'll actually pull moisture from the air. So if I pull this frame out and I'm going to extract honey and I pull 4 or 5 of these frames out and stick it in my garage, and let's just say it was at 17%, it's hot, humid, it's been raining. All of a sudden, the honey in here gets hygroscopic. It starts to pull in the moisture content at 18.1, the yeast will start to get active at 18.1, and then you'll see these cells right here, or these cappings will start to, it looks like they're bleeding. They'll start to ferment. If it's watery and drippy, take your fingers across the top and hold it on your finger. I mean, really look at it. If it's just watery, that's just moisture. If it's bubbly, like it's fermenting, I mean, it's bubbly, it's frothy type thing, then I would just throw the frame away because it's fermented and there's a wild yeast in it. I mean, we don't make mead out of wild yeast. We control it. And I mean, if anybody, Dylan Westrick, if you want mead, Dylan Westrick in our club is the man to see. He has the best taste in meads. But what to do is if it's like, who had it? I think Beth had them. Beth had them in her car that I took a look at. If anybody was back there looking at it, the frame of her honey, it was just had a little bit of moisture on it where it had leaked a little bit, and those are fine. But if you took your finger and seen it was frothy, that it was fermenting, then I would not give that to the bees, because it's all the bees are going to do is try to reprocess that, and it'll give them dysentery. It's like getting diarrhea for us. And then you've just wasted everything. But so as soon as you pull this frame of honey, pull that frame of honey and extract it. So when we're going to go through the honey section, if I know I'm going to pull honey today, I have to have everything ready in a plan of action and have it in a sealed container by that second day.
Okay,
And
so Jay, all
Yes,
of the other frames that I had that had honey on them, I should store them in a container and not just leave them, in the garage.
Yep. Or if you have room, put them in your freezer. Freeze the entire thing.
Okay, got it.
When you freeze it, like what we do with cut comb, stick it in the freezer and it'll stay there forever.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll go through more of this, John, on the honey section. But you don't have to have a refractometer. The reasons most people have a refractometer is because, say this frame is pretty 80% capped with these nice white cappings. In the center of it, or the queen area that she was laying, is all open nectar. So this is under 18.1, but this open nectar might be at 32%. And that's when people it's called blending. I'm going to extract this frame, but this 18.1 or say 17% is going to get offset by the 28%. Is my average at that point above 18.1. The biggest mistake in a second or third gear beekeeper is they take an entire box, extract all the honey. They have a 5-gallon bucket, and then they call, or I've heard it, and I've heard it over and over, and I hate to hear it. I have a 5-gallon bucket of honey, and now it's belching out foam, and it stinks like beer.
Oh.
They never checked the moisture content when they run and done all that. So they have a 5-gallon bucket of honey that's worth $180 plus. It's fermenting, and there's nothing you can do with it. You can't feed it back to the bees. You can't. I mean, Dylan Westrick has tried a couple times with people that he can put SO2, which is a chemical, stop the wild yeast, and try to make mead from it. He says, but it tastes god awful. So you've wasted everything. But we'll go through more of this in the honey section. For bees, it's energy and fuel. So remember, for us, it's just like it's honey. It's viscosity. You're not going to pour this down your throat and drink it like you would a tea. But what the bees do when they chew the capping off, they regurgitate that with water and liquefy it down and make more of a Gatorade. So they're thinning it down, but they're still using the carbohydrates out of it, the energy and the simple sugars, because it's broke down into glucose and fructose. So they have an instant carbohydrate right there. They must rehydrate it, like I covered, in a sealed container that you can seal or stick it in the freezer. There's the two quickest ways to stop that and to try and put it out of the way. If you pull the frame of honey and you can't get to it in a couple days, put it back on the bees. They'll turn on and kick that heat back up. They'll have everything. They'll turn on and put it back. They'll dry it back out. If there's any cells that are leaking, they'll turn on, lick it right back up. They'll put the capping back on it. They're the best work crew. Open nectar. So here's the difference, John. If I see open nectar like this, and here's a frame, I got tons of capped honey up above, that guaranteed it's under that 18.1%, or the bees wouldn't have capped it, and I have open nectar. This is anything from that 18.1 up. If it's like tulip poplar might be 32% sugar. It could be eastern redbud. It could be from white Dutch clover at like 18, 19%. And also depends if you're rain and moisture content. This is their instant fuel, and bees will sometimes cap 90% of that frame and keep some of this open, that if they just want to drink, foragers will come up and drink this because it's an instant carb, and then they'll go out and fly. So they fill up their stomach, not their honey crop. They fill up their stomach with honey and with bee bread, and that's what gives them their flight to go out and get more, and then they fill up their crop. But they cannot, if they fill up their crop, they cannot take that and put that into their stomach to fly back. So they're calculating, it's like a plane. They only put on so much fuel to get to their destination and get back, and they still have to have the cargo. So in that, it's an instant, it's their carbohydrate. Hive beetle feces, if you have hive beetles that crawl across this is the stuff that you'll see that white fermentation, or you'll see it start to bubble up. And you cannot store it because you have to let the bees dehydrate this down. Because at this point, this is only nectar. This is not honey. And we'll get through this more in the section, but nectar, think of nectar as taking a 2-to-1 sugar water, a 1-to-1 sugar water, and drinking it. What happens is it's called invertis, INVERTIS. Invertis is the chemical in their stomach that breaks down the glucose into sucrose into fructose and glucose, that converts it into honey. So this nectar, this open nectar, has to get broke down by the bees, ingesting it, mixing it with the saliva glands and this invertis. Then they'll go up and regurgitate it and put it into the cells. Then they fan it. So think of a dehydrator. They're fanning it down, making it less than 18.1. Then they test it. If it's under the 18.1, then it gets a cap on it. As a beekeeper, when I pull frames of honey in the fall, if I'm going to do this, if the whole entire frame was capped, I'm solid. I know that the moisture content's down. The more open nectar I pull with it, this is going to mix with this, and that blend, that's when a refractometer comes into instant, that I have to turn on half something to check that moisture content. In the hive hierarchy, this is depending on the colony. And we'll get to this for those of you that have multiple hives. And think about this if you're going to have a nuke. My biggest mistake is right here in this lower right-hand corner. Do not put full-size colonies with little tiny nukes nearby. This is great for May, June, July. Once we hit August and the dearth comes on, these start to suffer because the resources aren't out there. What happens then is bees love to work. You know, busy as a bee, we hear that. And bees love to forage, and bees love to this. Bees also like to rob. And this colony, let's just say this colony here is going to go, you know what? We have a great attitude. We're going to turn around, and we don't have enough resources. All these foragers are going to come out, and they're going to try to jam inside this little nuke, and they're going to steal everything out of this nuke. They're going to kill the colony. They're going to take all the honey, the nectar, the pollen, and they're going to bring it back to this colony. So never have your nukes where you have your full-size colonies at.
Thank you for
and
saying
I've learned
that,
this
because
lesson.
because I just have my 2 hives, and I decided to put the nuke, which I have not got yet, in between. So I will not do that. But then where should I put that? Does it have to be like maybe 50 feet away?
The further you can get it away from it, the better.
Okay.
And remember, if you're going to have full-size colonies in your yard and nukes, this nuke, I give it, if you see that little tiny front door.
Yeah.
These girls have the 3.5-inch slot on both sides, and the little tiny hole here, that's only a 1-inch hole. I want to reduce that down to stop these girls from stealing into these. That's a big. So when you set up your yards, they're called nuke yards. Everything behind my house, except I think 2 of them right now, are all nukes. Everything that's 1.5 miles away are all full-size colonies. So if they're going to rob, they have to work for it now. So when you do nukes, splits, brood breaks, you're going to turn on a brood break, you're going to do queen rearing, just know what you're going to do and kind of set yourself up accordingly to that. It's not the most important, but it's something to keep on your mind. And then and you could just go crazy after that. I mean, this was one of my biggest colonies that had 100, 200, 300, 360, 420, almost 500. That was 500 pounds right here. And that's, in fact, I'll go back one. This little colony right here was my mean bees. Those were my first year being a beekeeper, and she turned into this. But that's in August. That was late in the season, but it was late August, September. I was in a snowmobile suit, cowboy boots, duct tape, 3 layers of shirts and a sweatshirt. I look like the Michelin Man.
Yeah.
And I broke these down, and that's what got me into trouble. And here's the other colony that never went more than two boxes tall. So that's the difference. If I would have known what I know now, I would have equalized these out. But then on the scary part of that, I'd have had 2 colonies that would have been mean. But you can do what you want. I mean, you can turn on and make tons of nukes. They're right here in this middle picture. There's probably 180. There's probably 250 pounds of honey in these 4 boxes here. So it just depends what you want to do. But don't be afraid to experiment a little bit and ask questions. I mean, I absolutely have a no dumb policy questions. I mean, ask, because you can't learn this honestly by reading a book or doing it. You got to ask questions and then try it. And there's no set theories that this is going to work every time. Something will change. The temperament of the bees, the strength of the bees, the weather. So think of every time when you want this honey. I mean, honey is all our goal right now for you guys. Imagine 800 different things compiling, changing that decision every day.
So could you have had an alternative to that if you have just stay with me here. If you had mean bees like that, could you have pinched the queen, done something to that hive to either thin it out? I mean, is there other alternatives versus just dropping down to 1 or 2 boxes?
Yep. And that's what I did. That's what got me into queen rearing.
Oh,
so what I done on this big gigantic hive off to the right, upper right, I took that hive, I pinched the old queen, I took all these things, and I made up 10 splits. So I made 10 nukes. The problem is the queens that I bought were more docile queens. So I bought 10 queens. I spent like $400, got new queens. The genetics in these hot bees, they killed all those queens and raised their own queen. So now I had 10 splits that I took to Dwight Wilson. So if those of you know Dwight Wilson, I took those 10 hot hives to his place to mate. All of a sudden, he called me within 2 weeks, and he called and he says, "Do you like being a friend with me?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "You're like my dad." I call him my dad. And Dwight said, "If you want to be friends another day, you take these 10 hives and put gasoline on them and kill them." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, from his house, a half a mile from his house, when he was walking towards the apiary, the bees were binging him in the head.
Wow.
They were the most fiercest mean bees. So what did I do? When you give me a challenge, I started reading the bee biology, how to raise queens, how to graft, how to do this, how to do that. And I still have some aggressive bees every once in a while. And when I do, it's off with their head. I do not play that game anymore.
Yeah.
So I got a question. We got a pop quiz real quick. So I want you guys to think about this, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back to it. On an inspection, a nice sunny day, 75 degrees, I saw foragers coming in and going, or coming in and out. Tons of workers, open pollen, honey, nectar, honey, lots of pollen, but I saw no eggs, no larvae, only a small amount of capped brood, but I saw a few queen cups. And I want to keep the hive. I don't want to do anything else with it. I want you to diagnose the problem. What questions would you ask? And is there a solution to it? So why don't we take a 10-minute break? I want you to think about that. Then I'm going to pick on a couple of you to answer that.
Jamie, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
I have a question. I've not been able to get into that K&B site that you sent the link for. Every time I click on it, all it does is take me to Facebook and stop.
Okay, just 1 second. We'll go ahead and fix that for you real quick.
Inspection.
Get your email up here.
Foragers coming in and out.
Let me get into Facebook. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Laura, just to confirm your email, AS and BS 4H club at gmail.com.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Queen.
Go ahead and check your email now, Laura.
Jamie, this is Beth. I'm having the same issue.
Okay. All right, let me grab your email, Beth.
It did the same thing. It just took me to Facebook and stopped.
Okay, let me see what's going on here. No. Back. Let's see. For Laura and Beth,
Yes.
go to Facebook and like my ask to be my friend on Facebook.
Okay. Okay.
And
Yeah,
then I can invite my friends list.
Okay. let's see, where do I go to? Where's friends? Okay. Create. Okay.
Wow, there's a lot of Jamie Walters out here.
Oh, let me see what I can do here. I love Facebook for so many things, but then again, I hate it to death.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand it.
Where do I find friends?
Invite.
Maybe as guests to his friends.
Let me do this. Just one second. I'll send you a link to my personal one,
Okay.
and I can join you that way. So I'm gonna send both you, Laura and Beth,
Yes.
my Facebook link. Okay, I just sent one for the link, and that'll take you to my Facebook page, and it just asks to be my friend.
Okay.
Won't you be my friend?
Send
Okay.
that,
Ryan.
did you send that? Okay, my,
Foragers.
Foragers are not really present. That one's kind of a little more difficult for me. So if there's not a lot of, there's a lot of pollen. It's you know, a lot of it's not, certainly not a dearth. There's a lot of pollen available, but you're not getting pollen in. You're missing the foragers. Would that be an indication perhaps that there's a disease that's killing the foragers? Or
Okay, that would be the time if I ever walked up to a colony, and let's just say it's next week, I have 3 of them in a row, A, B, and C. A and B are running in and out, in and out, in and out, tons of stuff going on. If I looked at C and I didn't see but maybe 5 or 6 bees coming out, maybe a couple guard bees on the front, that should be an alarm right off the bat that I need to inspect that colony. To your part, John, yes, it could be a brood disease, it could be something, or it could be an unequalization that all of a sudden they had tons of pollen in the week before, and now they have tons and tons and tons of brood and house bees, but they don't have the population to get a workforce out.
I see.
Okay, so remember, when these colonies in this early spring, it's a gigantic ebb and flow that you might see tons and tons of nectar and no workforce, and then all of a sudden you go in there, now they've sucked all the pollen down, and they're turning it to bee bread, and you have a gigantic, you have like you might have 7 frames of brood.
Well,
I just got into one Saturday that had 9 frames of brood between 2 boxes. That hive is going to literally blow apart in 2 weeks. So it gives you something to, but always be asking questions all the time. One last one on an inspection. 80 to 90 degree, or 89 to 94 degrees all week. It's going to be sunny. The bees were very defensive. 3 supers of honey on the top. There's no eggs, no larvae, some cat brood, but no pollen coming in. Some dead bees with their heads chewed off.
you got a problem.
So reread it if you need to.
Let's say some robbing is going on.
And this is for you guys right now. This is a hard question.
And I have a queen.
Their fonts on their own bees.
Mandy, would you like to chime in? Or Steve?
They probably don't have a queen.
Very good. Good question. Miss Jen or Katie?
Oh, she said you don't have a
Do they
queen.
have enough resources in terms of water?
Very
Oh.
good.
Mhm.
There has to be a disease.
Um,
No? Well, why would
in this case, and I'll explain it. Okay, there could be a possibility. I would still check.
I mean, I would agree with her because with the heads being chewed off and stuff, I'm thinking that there's some kind of a virus
Okay.
or disease.
I won't get into too much of this further, but I'm going to explain the reason why. And she had a good point at this. 80 to 94 degrees all week. Sunny. Bees were defensive. Think about this in August. Because 3 supers of honey. So we've already went through the whole entire honey flow or the nectar flow. No eggs, no larvae, some cat brood. The queen actually in August, when there's a dearth going on, she goes into a shutdown. So to Mandy's thing, there's no queen. There's no queen that is actively laying. The queen will be in, but they're not feeding her and they're putting her on a diet. When you see some bees or some dead bees with their heads chewed off, they're eating, and you won't see eggs. Remember over here, no eggs, no larvae, because what are they eating for protein?
They're eating themselves.
They're eating themselves. The key thing to this is with their heads are chewed off. The cat brood, all of their heads will be gone. And then on the front landing board, the thing I left out of this is, which is a key, you'll see actually the body from the thorax to the abdomen is being carried out the front entrance. How could I revert this? Is there a solution to this?
Give them some food.
What
Feed
could you
them
put?
protein.
Pollen.
Pollen?
Pollen
Absolutely.
patties or something,
Maybe
maybe.
3 supers of honey.
Yeah, because it says no pollen.
If you wanted to save this colony, what I would do
Moisture, water.
is I would harvest my capped honey in these supers, and I would put a 1-to-1 sugar water on the top, or take all the honey off, put a 1-to-1 sugar water on the top, and little tiny circles of pollen, which will turn on stimulate. Then the bees will think, oh, now there's pollen coming in. Now there's a nectar flow kicking back in. You're going to see this in August, late July, August, and a little bit into September, until you start seeing the asters, the goldenrod, and things kick back in. Absolute exception to the rule last year. Last year, we never had a dearth. There were flowers in the ditches all the way through August, September, all the way up to the 1st of November. So we never even seen this condition last year. But like I said, Mother Nature, she's a mean little woman.
So Jamie, the fact that the bees are defensive, is that really a clue to that, or is that just thrown in?
No, they will be defensive. If you ever mow your lawn in August and everything's drying up, you start seeing the lawns turn brown. Remember, you're driving home all the time, seeing what's in bloom. If you see an absolute dearth going on, I would absolutely wear your veil every time you mow the lawn, because this is the time, and I've done it over and over. I'm my own worst enemy. I preach to you guys about wearing a veil. I got on my 62-inch zero-turn mower. I thought I'm just going to take a real quick swat in front of the hives. They balled me around the head, and I had about 9 stings in the face, because they're a little bit more agitated. They know that this is about the time robbing season kicks in, and anything that pesters them, a weed whacker, it could be a dog, it could have been some kid with a stick, anything. They're not defensive. They're not aggressive where they're going to come out and get you, but anything right around their colony, they're going to light them up. So when the dearth kicks in, and I usually tell everybody, I put it in the newsletters, everything else, when the dearth starts kicking in, put your veil on, go out and mow. And then if you ever see your veil and you see the bees binging your veil, just know those are stings that you would have taken in the face. So just be precautious. Let me fire up let's do the next one in line was increases. Oh, wrong thing here. And the reason I want to go through with increases, and this is increasing your apiary. You don't have to do this, but I want you to understand the basics of it. So if you have a colony, if we go out here next week and I start giving you guys nukes on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all of a sudden 2 weeks down the road, you have an abundance and a plethora of flowers in your area. You have tons of nectar going, and all of a sudden this thing explodes. You have the options of being able to make a nuke or to do a split off your own colonies.
Like where I'm getting to at right now out there at work.
Exactly that. Oh, right there.
But what you referred to from the previous, it's not good if you do that split, like you have 2 hives in a row, to put that third one in a row next to it? Or am I going to have to locate it somewhere else?
If you have in this buildup, okay, in this spring buildup, you can have full-size hives by nukes, okay? Once we get into that July and August, that's when I would kind of move things around or reduce those front boards so they can defend it. I would not make a split in August with a little tiny colony, like a handful of bees, and make a split in August because they're not able to defend it. Remember, a strong colony, the absolute key to everything is a strong colony. If you have a strong colony and they're able to defend that front entrance, then you're okay. Okay, so we're going to go through increases here. Okay, I'm going to jump back on the soapbox with the Varroa. By the time we hit, you guys that are going to get nukes here in the spring, you won't even have to worry about doing your first alcohol wash until mid-June or late June. So if that's going to be in your time period that you're going to religiously go out and check every month, that's the time to do it. Remember, this is not what you want to see, 162 mites per 300 in your sample. The easy check, and I'm going to show you both ways to do that. Record your results. And then this next class, because we're going to have Varroa building up by then, this next class, we're going to go through this booklet. So if you have time before the June class, go through this book, highlight it. It is your own personal book. Everybody got one? Highlight it, put sticky notes with it, put questions, write it, mark it up the way you want. And we're going to go through it step by step by step. We're going to understand the harsh chemicals, the natural chemicals, and the things you can do without even adding chemicals to it. What other things you can do. So we're going to understand all of that. If I get you through that and you can understand that, I will honestly put this class up against 95% of the beekeepers in Ohio. Every time I give out that book, there's people that, oh no, I'm going to let mites be mites, let bees be bees. Remember, we're affecting each other every time you have bees within an area, and you're affecting your own hives on top of that. So on to increases. The standard for a nuke, when we say a nuke, everybody's talking 5-frame nukes. There's also, off to the left, you got a 2-frame nuke. A 5 frames in the center, that is standard. So when we talk about Langstroth hives, when we say nuke, it's a 5-frame. And they also make 4 frames off to the side. There's different pros and cons to everything. When we go into a 4/4, so this is a 5-5 split, 1 queen comes out left, 1 queen comes out right. There's tons of resources you have to have. As we're a 2-frame, I don't have to have the resources. 2 frames, a frame of bees and a frame of honey and nectar, or a frame of nectar and pollen. But is this little 2-frame colony strong enough to take a dearth for 4 days? Probably not. But if you have a 5-frame, same way here. They also make queen castles that I can make splits. So if I get into a hive and I find 2 or 3 queen cells, I can make 2 or 3 splits. In something like this, only 2 frames of bees in each gap. So here's 2, 4, 6, and 8. Is that colony strong enough to survive? That is completely on the beekeeper. I want to hedge my bets. If you want a 90+% rate that it's going to succeed every time, stick with the 5 frames. your full-size colony is only going to have 10 frames in it. If you go to make a nuke, you have to take half the resources away. Yeah, that's why they have 2 frame, 4 frame, 4/4s, and things like that. But it's for you to run and decide how much am I going to take away from my original colony to let them build up, or they're going to suffer. And then there's also 4/4s, which this is the same kind of box split this way, except instead of 5 frames on each side, there's 4 frames. And each one has its pros and cons. When I want to do a split,
Jamie, sorry.
Yep,
Quick
go ahead.
question. If you go back to that other slide
Yes, ma'am.
where you have the 4 on the one side and it's clear on the other, can you do a setup like that and only split your one hive to only have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames and have it clear on the other side so that when they start to grow, you can actually add stuff?
Okay, and that kind of split is called a Fowler board. And a Fowler board, it has think about a shape of a T. So it hangs up here on the outside edge. It's kind of like a top bar hive. It's kind of a split between a top bar hive. This Fowler board, instead of being, you'll see that it's dadoed in here and it's slid in and it's stuck. This is a solid. I mean, you can't move it. A Fowler board is actually, it fills that gap. And as these bees grow, you can just take and slide that over and slide in another frame and slide it over and slide in another frame. It is a good thing to do, but the bad side of it is if you procrastinate, the bees will jump that gap and come around and put burr comb all in this side. And when you do that, then you have an absolute mess.
Can you technically block off, like if you put frames in that side and then block off that entrance, would it still work?
If you were going to do that, if you're going to put the frames in it, I would just go ahead and pull this.
Oh. So
Yeah,
could you,
if you were going to do it like top bar hives will do that. And then in the big V, if everybody knows what a top bar hive is, it's in the shape of a V. And actually they have a V Fowler board. It's with an F Fowler board that they actually pull over. And as it builds, they just pull these over and open it up bigger and bigger and bigger till the full size, 4 foot, 8 foot, 6 foot, whatever it is. If you're starting out with a nuke or a package, you're usually starting out with that 5 frames of a strong colony, that this would be in the middle and then your outside frames on the outside. And as the bees grow, they'll grow into it. This would be hard to do if you're looking at that and just adding 1 frame in, because if they don't jump on this next frame, they might pull in queen cells in that center or that off the outside and swarm on you. But you'd still have to inspect it the same way. Pull your outside frame and then check each frame after that.
but in a pinch, if you needed to do a split, you could do something similar to that then?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And all the manufacturers sell Fowler boards. You can go to Lowe's or Menards and get a chunk of plywood. I mean, if you have scrap wood around, and make a Fowler board, just that it where the frames hang on that rest, on that lip. You just want that little V to sit in there, and then you just slide it back and forth. And there's a lot of guys that use that too. I've seen that. These are just this in the middle. That's political signs. So after the political signs are up, if you're on have somebody that donates them, you can cut them up, put little slots in, and just make it up that way. And then as this grows, they just pull each one. And as it gets the full box, they just put another box on top. So there's millions and millions of different ways to do this. But swarm prevention, so anybody that has an overwintered colony. So for most of you, next year when you have that overwintered colony, this is what you want to see. This is your buildup. Your maximum honey output or your honey input is going to be 6 weeks before for your maximum population. So now I have tons of foragers that are going to pull in as soon as the nectar flow starts. So for us, by next Thursday, game on for the rest of the season. And you're going to have to get honey supers on and get this thing, because they're going to explode with everything coming in. Everything's in bloom right now. Flowers, ditches, trees, everything's in. Remember the pressure. The colony is complete. At this point, they're full of resources and there's no room to grow. The reason we do artificial swarming and pull this colony, you can do a dirty split, which you can just cut it in half. The old queen will keep laying. The new colony will turn around, raise another colony. When they begin to backfill, So that queen area, when she's laying that football, the bees always hold that open. But as the resources come down and they begin to backfill, if you see in that brood area that for that queen and it's starting to be wet nectar or pollen, they're starting to backfill on her. Bearding. We've seen this boil out at the apiary. Bees hanging out the front. Early in the spring, bees should not be hanging out the front unless they're jam-packed. And also into drones. The green drone comb is the perfect time to be putting this in and start making your splits up from that. The queen cups were versus queen cells. Again, I won't go into a whole lot of detail because I apologize for one point that I keep putting these slides in, but on the other point, I want you to understand it because there's so many things that go on in the apiary. And when people call me and they go, I think it was a queen cell, but no, it was a queen cup. There's completely two different things. The queen cup, coffee cup upside down, queen cell, and there's different stages. This is called the open end, closed end, emerged end. And kind of get that down. So when you look at that raw peanut, for those of you that have ever taken a handful of raw peanuts, imagine standing that up and shoving it into your frame. And that's exactly what they look like. This early means probably there. Maybe she's here, maybe a 10%. If it's closed, she's gone. If it's emerged, that means there's a virgin queen running around and everything has changed. The dynamics have changed in that colony. For a strong nuke, and this is that 80, 90%, if I want to make a split and I'm not after honey, remember, every time you take your original hive A and do a split, you're cutting it down for honey production, for brood production, and resources. So you're going to turn around and you're going to slow yourself down. For those of you that want to make splits, make your splits April, May, June, up to about mid-July. That summer, end of the summer solstice, when we get to that point, that is the amount of time it's going to take that new colony to build up to get through winter, unless you have other resources. So like myself, I got 100 and some odd hives. I can steal other resources from other bees to make these young splits get through. So I'll go through up to August. But by nature, do not go after the summer solstice. So that second week in July, that's when you're done making splits. If you want that colony to get through winter and enough time for them to get resources in, for you to feed them, for them to draw out comb and do everything to get a good chance to get through winter time. Transfer the frames from the parent colony. So do you have to have this frame of brood, all three frames of brood come out of one colony? Absolutely not. But if I'm stealing frames from hive A, B, C, or D to make this nuke up, I want to check that frame and make sure I don't take the queen from the other colony. So if I have two full-size hives, like John was talking before, I can make one split up or one strong nuke by stealing resources from other bees. If I take the queen from hive A and put her in this box, then they have a war going on because they're loyal to this queen with that frame. You just stuck in a hive frame over here of brood. Now these two frames are going to fight back and forth. If you do not take the queen, this colony might have a little bit of a fight back and forth, but by the end within 4 hours, they're going to go, hey, we're queenless and we've got to work together, and they'll merge right together. Anybody that makes nukes, you can steal from 100 different hives and they'll all work within 4 hours. They have the queenless roar going on and they want a queen.
Do you have to add a queen to a nuke that way, or is there a way to get them to produce their own queen?
Okay. So I'm going to take a couple different scenarios on that. If I have this strong nuke here and I give them no queen or no queen cell, they're going to take that youngest egg that they can find. They're going to eat the bottom edge of that out, and they're going to draw their own queen out. But this is going to take an entire month and a half for this colony to survive to get another queen emerged and out laying. I could at this point make this nuke. You could do OTS, which you can cut it down, save yourself 4 or 5 days. You could turn around and talk to a queen breeder, Andrew Carlin, myself, Dwight Wells, Dwight Wilson, and say, I'd like to buy a queen, or I could buy a virgin queen. Virgin queens come about $10. So when I have 300 of them next week, you could turn around and say, hey, Jamie, do you have a virgin? Yes. But the reason I sell it cheaper is your queen's going to come, that virgin queen's going to come in. She's got to go out and take a mating flight. The reason she sells cheaper is, what if she doesn't come back?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. For a mated queen, they go for $40. Why? She's already went out and taken a flight. I've taken the loss on my side, and that's why she's more money, because she's proven. For me, a virgin queen has to come back, and she's got to lay at least minimum 2 solid frames of brood before I sell her, because I want to make sure she's laying a good pattern. She's got good genetics, and overall that she's accepting, and she's not a running queen or an aggressive queen. So that's why they're more money. You can actually buy queen cells, capped queen cells from people, and they run around $5 to $7 depending on the person. So the cheaper you get them, the more risk you take. The more money you pay, the less risk you take. So there's an offset of both sides of that. And you can take, if you don't want honey, honestly, and you want to go for numbers, you could take a full-size colony, like the one that was belching in the previous pictures, and you can break it down into 5 nukes. But then you have to buy 5 queens, 5 sets of gear, 50 frames, and more bees, more frames, more time, more money. So that's why that equilibrium, remember, time, money, and resources, they all come into play. The different options, again, here's a 5 frame, here's a 4/4 where one comes out the front, one comes out the back. Here's mine that I have a 3, 3, and 3, because when I steal resources away from her, I can take 1 frame and it's still not hurting the overall. I'm only taking 1/3 of her frames away, or a capped honey or capped brood. So I can steal things away. But the more things you have, the more things you have to keep up. You can skimp on brood early in the season. What I mean by that is, if I have a 5 frame nuke, and I know that now that AccuWeather from Thursday, if the AccuWeather forest guy or lady is correct, season's full on after that, 70, 80 degrees, going to look nice. Do I have to put in those full 3 frames of brood? No. If I know it's going to be nice and sunny, I can put on a sugar water on the top. I can give them a little bit of pollen. I could skimp and go down to 1 frame of brood. But my success rate is going to drop back. But what I'm planning on is the weather's going to be better, so this little colony could build up. I would not take 1 frame of brood in August and make a split, because I know August we have the dearth going on. Then I got to feed them tons and tons of junk food to get through the season. So when I say you can skimp on brood early in the season, I can make a split with 2 frames, and I would feel comfortable doing that. I would probably never take down 1 frame.
So you're suggesting not only sugar water, and that's the scenario where you have less brood. Not only feed them sugar water, but did I hear you say also maybe put like a pollen patty on there too?
Yep, a little pollen patty. Okay. And the patties are right around 11 inches by 5 inches. Okay. And what you're going to do is you're just going to tear off little pieces, take the paper off one side, and throw it in. If they look like a pig, yep.
Okay.
Yep. No, right on the top bar.
Oh, on the top. Okay.
Yep, right on the top.
All right.
If they look like little pigs at a trough, and they're consuming that, you go back 3 days later and it's gone, feed them a little bit more.
Okay.
The thing you don't want to do, don't rip that thing in half and put this gigantic patty on this little nuke, because they can't defend it, because they're going to cluster around that brood. If they can't defend it, and all of a sudden a hive beetle gets inside, she goes up with her oval depositor, hooks it in, lays 1,000 hit. Oh, excuse me. If she goes up and lays her oval depositor in there, now you have 1,000 hive beetle larvae that are crawling around. So what happens then in 2 weeks? Your whole entire hive is slimed. The bees are gone, and all the equipment you can't. I mean, you just can't. The only thing to do is bleach water it, throw your frames away, and start over from scratch. So how many you take away from the parent colony is totally up to you. In the spring is the time to do that artificial swarm. and you can do one split and still maximize your nectar or your honey production. If you take 2 away, then you're cutting into that a little bit more. If you take 3 away, you're definitely cutting in, and then 4, 5, and up from that, you're just doing it for numbers at that point. But don't be afraid of being diverse in this. If you have 2 colonies and you go, you know what, I'm not really doing this for honey, but I want some honey for the family, some for family members, and I also want some numbers, take Hive A and work that colony. You're going to be working 2 different ways here. You're going to work Hive A for honey production. You're not worried about the drones. You're not worried about anything. You're going to go maximize your honey production. Hive B, let's do 2 splits. And then turn around and have numbers. So I can have emergency queens if I need it. I have some splits to do some other stuff. And then I can do both. So there's a lot of people that do that. Andrew Carlin does about 2/3 of his bees are for honey, and then the rest of them are for candle production, propolis, trapping, and doing things like that. You might see into this multiple queen cells on a frame. What to do is take number 8 wire. This is a little bit of an advanced thing. What you're going to do is you're going to cage each one of these cells, and you're going to build a nuke in a queenless colony. So then you can emerge each one of these. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these 6, I could actually have 6 queens. If I left this in a colony by itself, the first one out's going to slaughter the others. So in turn, what I'm going to do is put.
Can you also use like a push, one of those push cages, or do you need to buy this number 8 hardware?
Nope. You could use a push-in cage. The reason I use the number 8 hardware cloth is because I can make custom sizes up.
Okay.
But have them at least 1.5 inches tall. That way you can push it all the way down to the foundation. If you barely push it in, the bees will eat the outside edge of this wax and crawl underneath and kill this queen.
Ah.
So I don't want any queen running around inside this box other than what's caged on each one of these cells. Then what you're going to do, you're going to make a queenless colony. So tons of nurse bees. You can actually shake nurse bees off of other hives. You're going to shove them all inside of here. And the first queen out is going to stay inside this little box. And she's going to pipe. The next one out's here. And you're going to check this thing every 8 hours. You're going to go out and look. As she emerged, then you can pick that queen up, put her in a box, or put her in a California or JBZ, and start another colony. Or if you have 2 or 3 queens that emerged, you go on the Black Swamp Beekeepers Mentors page or within the own group for the beginners and say, hey, I got 3 queens. Guaranteed. And it's money back in your pocket. But what you're going to do is you're going to stimulate this by 1-to-1 or put in pollen in the top. And what you're doing, you're just trying to save all your resources. Instead of having all 8 queens fight to the death, imagine her having to fight 8 times to get 1 queen out. By the time she's got battered up wings, everything else, she's just trash. And by the time she goes out and makes a flight, she probably will never even come back. And sometimes what to do is if these cages are so big or you have so many, just leave a frame out. And then when you're going to check this, you're just going to check each one individually, see which one emerged. She's running around inside. Then you get the talent of trying to pick her up. You're going to pull this cage open real fast. You're going to pick her up, put her in a cage. It gives you some practice. And if you kill her off, you kill one off. But try to get some practice in that. For those of you that I hopefully do not, if you accidentally kill your queen or anything else like that, I want you to understand how to introduce a queen. In this, you're going to call myself, Tim Arhite, somebody in Michigan, somebody in Indiana, and say, I want a queen, a mated queen or a virgin queen. We're either going to give you in a JBZ, it's just like this, it's a plastic container, and you're going to have that mated queen on the inside and then some young attendants. And those are usually nurse bees or the nice white bees. On the 3rd day, you're going to release her. So either you're going to take a toothpick and shove this inside, or there's a cap you can flip on the end and tear this open, and you're going to release her and watch her walk down inside and to run and go down inside and then starting to do her thing. That 3-day limit From the time you get it to the time you put it in, 3 days max. Because what they're doing, if this is a different queen, let's say a Carnolian or one from mine, and you put it inside your colony, don't instantly pop that candy and let her walk out. Your colony will think she's an inferior queen or somebody that's trying to get inside, and they're going to kill her instantly. The reason we have these introduction cages is because what she's doing, she's stroking the antennae of the nurse bees on the outside. They're regurgitating royal jelly, and at the same time, they know they're queenless, and they're spreading that QMP, and they're saying, hey, this queen is nice and healthy. By the 3rd day, when you release her out the front, she'll walk on out, they'll accept her, and then you have a new queen, she takes right over. After the 3rd and 4th and 5th day, you'll see this cage, it's starting to get propolized. They'll close every one of these little vents up, and she'll be on the inside, and she'll starve and die. So 3 days is that absolute button. The California cage, and it all depends on the dealer. I sell bees with both in California or JBZ. So you might call me and I might have both or either or. In a California cage, if you pick up a queen, say you killed your queen last week, or something happened and it absconded, disease, something else, and you need to purchase a queen, this is what you're going to get in a California. The screen's here, the queen will be the inside, there'll be 1 or 2 attendants. The end of this is called queen candy. It's honey mixed with a little bit of glycerin and mixed with powdered sugar. It's very, very soft. And the attendant bees will take about 2 days to chew through this to release the queen. When I shove this inside the frame, I want to shove this right into the wax with the screen up or the screen down. I want the nurse bees to be able to feed her. If they can't, if you take that screen, and I honestly have had people that bought $200 worth of queens from me, take that screen and shove it right into the wax. And then call me and say, well, my queen died. You need to replace it. And then they send me a picture. And I said, why'd you shove the screen into the wax? Well, it stuck better. Please, please, please. She's got to be fed hundreds of times during the day. So when I look down between the gap right here, if you're going to introduce a queen or get a new queen or start a split, I want to see, here's the snout. It's not being obstructed by anything. And here's the screen so those nurse bees can feed her. And have a little bit of tilt upward. So I want the snout upward, because if one of these attendants die on the inside, I want that attendant to fall back. If I put the snout down and maybe 1 or 2 attendants die and they drop over the top, she'll never get out. So just a few things to think about. A JBZ, same thing. You're going to see that snout. It's facing down a little bit. Here's this extra area. Take the toothpick, shove it right between the frames, and here's this queen walking around. When you take the toothpick, do not skewer it through that queen. Blow on her, shove it through very, very slowly, and all it's doing, it's resting so it doesn't drop to the bottom. All the heat's up top. Again, there's queen candy. They're going to start chewing through this. You can even take a toothpick and poke a couple holes into it. Make it kind of ragged on the front so something they can get chewed into. By the 3rd day, if they only have maybe a 1/16 inch left, take a number 2 pencil or a toothpick, pop that candy out, take this cage, set it on the top bar. You'll see a couple attendants running the inside. They're starting to tease her, and she'll walk out, and she'll walk right down in between the frame, and she'll do her thing. So if you buy queens, those are the 2 most popular. They also have 3-hole, which is the same kind of thing as a California. For those of you that have kept bees over and you have some extra gear, you can set up a bait hive. A bait hive is usually an 8-frame box. You can do it in nukes and other things. It's 2 of the nastiest frames that you have in your operation, that black, brown. If you call me and you want some old junk, I got some old junk that I get ready to throw away. I keep it for bait hives. If you have an apiary nearby, or out in the edge of a forest, you have some kind of farmer field that you can hang these up 8 to 10 feet in the air. Leave that front entrance kind of reduced. You stick in some lemongrass. So lemongrass oil, you take a Q-tip, you plunge it in both sides with the lemongrass. You take that, you shove it into the inside between these 1 or 2 frames of this old comb. This is a deep box, and I put 2 mediums in so the bees can come in here as fast as they can. You can put in full deeps, it doesn't matter. When the colonies are swarming, so right now, swarm season will kick in on Thursday. When we hit that 78 degrees, swarm season is going to be in full gear. If you want to go out and get on the swarm list, call the sheriff's office, dog warden, county commissioners, city departments, streets and subsidiaries in town, parks department, and say you want to get put on their swarm list. If they have a swarm, or if you know of somewhere you can put it, you can try and put out a swarm. When these things go out, these forage bees are going to go out. They're going to turn around and fly in this box. They're going to smell around and go, you know what? This is perfect. It's about 4 cubic feet. It's got an entrance. It smells like the old queen in here because of the lemongrass smell. And the next thing you know, you're going to have $180 swarm move right in your box. And this is in my own backyard. And I caught a swarm. Some things on swarms. I want you to think, if you're going to go out and catch this, have a nuke ready in your trunk or in your truck, in your back seat. And yes, I've taken them in my wife's car, put them in the box, caught them that night, put them in the vehicle with me, and with my bee suit on, drove home and took them out. You're going to find them hanging from branches, out in the middle of the grass, hanging from little trees. They might be on a kid's swing set. They might be on the side of a car. They are docile because there's nothing to protect. They don't have any brood, no larvae, no resources. But always, always, always wear your veil, because the last thing you want to do is go, yeah, I'm a beekeeper. All the people around, and sometimes you'll have 1 or 2 people watching you. I've done one downtown Bryan at the Spangler Company, and I probably had 300 people watching me. The last thing you want to do is be screaming across the parking lot with 1,000 bees in your face and looking like a fool. And it scares everybody else that, oh my God, there's killer bees. So just nice and slow, put your box, drawn comb in the inside, take this box, put it right over by the swarm, and they'll walk right in the box. I mean, they will actually walk into the box for you. If it's hanging up on a limb, open up the top of this box, put a white sheet underneath. So if they do hit the grass, they don't have to crawl through the grass and everything. They're just going to hit the sheet, walk right in the box. Open up the box to the top, take this limb, ask the homeowner's permission to cut the branch. 99% of the time, they're going to go, no. If it's this little tiny suckling little tree here, somebody might have a problem if I'm cutting this gigantic branch off, and then you can just shake it. But the easiest is to cut the branch, have a thing of pruners with you, hang on to the branch up top, because this might be 3 to 5 pounds of bees in this early season. And it's called a primary swarm. But you're going to cut the branch, you're going to take this swarm, you're going to lower it right on top of your nuke or your 10-frame box or 8-frame. The bees are going to thin right out. They're going to climb off of this. They're going to crawl right down inside your box. You're going to close it up. You're going to wait till about 9, 10 o'clock at night. Go back, put duct tape on the front of this, put a strap over the box, put it in your vehicle, go home. You now have a new colony. On a larger branch like this, I would just put the box underneath, take the mulch, flatten it out, put a white sheet so they can crawl better. Put this box underneath it, take the limb, make sure everybody, all the people that are around, tell them to move just in case, especially young kids or elderly. Take that limb, shake it like an absolute Dickens. The bees will drop straight down into your box. Again, when most of them are in, close it back up. You just caught a swarm. Swing set that I did over in Stryker, same kind of thing. Put it underneath. I just picked it up, slammed it down. They went in the box, $180 in your pocket. And there's another hive. And this early in the season, that colony will be so strong. They're all filled up. These young swarms that you catch will draw out wax 5 times, if not more, than your regular colony that's been stabilized. because there's nothing for these girls to do. You can put in a box of all foundation and they'll draw it out and have it filled within a week.
So you mentioned that like the nuke needed to have drawn comb. You can just have foundation. It doesn't have to be drawn comb.
If you give them you can do it all with foundation, but just like the one I caught the other day and we had to catch it twice and we still lost half of it. There's some of them that'll hit the box and go, okay, this is a new home. Other ones will hit it. The next morning you go out and she's gone.
Oh.
So what I do is I kind of hedge my bets. I have it's called it's like kind of like protocol. The first thing I'll use is drawn comb. So that way the queen, that swarm queen that I just caught, she can go up there and start laying eggs right off the bat. If she does that, they're more apt to stay. If not, what I do is I take the second day, I'll take a frame of eggs from another hive, shake all the bees off, and stick them in there and let the colony think that she laid all them eggs. And even then, the one we caught half a mile away that ended up leaving, half the swarm stayed. The old queen left again because she knew it wasn't her eggs, and she left. So even on the best case scenario, you might go out and catch a swarm, go out the next morning, and half of them are gone, or the whole colony said, you know what, we're out of here. So don't be frustrated. I mean, one year Dee and I caught like 62 and we got maybe 48 because we spent hours catching them and then they just left. But that bees will be bees.
Okay, question. So
Yes.
once you get them into that box, you can't move that box till you go back that night, correct?
Yes, and we're going to talk about that on the next one. So thank you. The liability, and this is something that I got burnt, and I didn't get personally burnt, but we could have got burnt with an attorney on this one. If everybody knows where Pack Rats is in Defiance, it's out by General Motors. They got VW bugs on a pole. It looked like somebody skewered a bunch of VW bugs.
Mm-hmm.
The beekeepers, we started Black Swamp up. A lot of young beekeepers were out running around trying to get swarms. I mean, it was just one of those seasons that it was like 6 years ago at least. Everybody was snatching these swarms up. I had multiple calls, like 5 calls every day. All these swarms are going on. A beekeeper went, Pack Rats called me. I called somebody at the club. He showed up and took just what he could swipe into the box and left. What he took was the queen and maybe a third of the colony, if that. The 2/3 of the colony that was left behind was queenless. And it stung up like 18 of his customers that were out looking at vehicles. And there was going to be police involved in a lawsuit over this. So what I'm going to tell you is once you initiate, and this is from an attorney, Eric Mertz, in fact, once you initiate the capture, you are responsible for any injury, damage, or public or private or property. What he means by that is once I show up as the beekeeper and take responsibility to take them bees out, the city PD will tell you the same thing. Don't be afraid of telling people or have some cones or tape and say, you know what? I want you back 50 feet in every direction. I have construction cones that I put out. If somebody decides to take a camera and cross that line, it is not on me. I at least barricaded myself out. Defiant City Schools, I've had 2 or 3 swarms from there. They clear the whole part. They clear the whole gym or playground area. Stay or keep that box until 99% of the bees are captured or come back at night. If you turn on tell the school, everybody will work with you. They're unless it's downtown. I mean, if you're stopping traffic, there's only so much you can do. But do the best of your ability to catch all those bees. The best thing to do is to leave that box, like in the picture in the lower. I put that box right up against the swarm. They walked in. That night I went back 9, 10 o'clock, put duct tape on the front, put a ratchet strap around the box, and left. Key words, do not use a flashlight at night, because when you turn on a flashlight, they think the sun just came up and they're going to bing that flashlight and they're going to come right at you at night. If you're going to do it, use a red lens. For those that have coon hunters, those coon hunter red LEDs, bees see in the ultraviolet. They do not see red as red. They see red as black. So when you guys hear of me working bees at 2, 3 in the morning, I work bees at 2, 3 in the morning. I have a red LED light that's on my visor. I can turn on, do it. I can open it up. I don't do a whole hive inspection, but I can open it up and see the colony strength and other things. But the red LEDs or the red lens, the bees can't see you, but they just crawl. They won't fly, but they'll crawl. So you can work bees at night. So I could go in, turn on my red LED, pick up this box in the middle of the night. All the bees are in the inside. You put the duct tape on the front. If you have a top entrance, make sure you tape that off also. Put a good ratchet strap around it. Put it in your passenger seat and drive home. They ain't going to bother you a bit. But barricade tape, put your vehicle, if you got a vehicle, block it off a little bit. If you have other people around, tell them to go out and move things around a little bit. And warn the public of potentials of being stung. You know, the last thing, I mean, I love this. I passionately love this hobby, but it is not worth someone getting stung, having an anaphylactic shock and dying from. So if you see people around and they're going, what are you doing? Explain to them why you're putting on a suit. Explain to them that you're catching a swarm and what's going on. If you want some club literature, I will give you tons of flyers, business cards about the club. If they're interested in beekeeping, give them some information and educate them a little bit. You know, one single bee makes 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her lifetime. Give them some facts and some interesting, and take that opportunity to educate a little bit. But also tell them the potential of, you know, if you're over here and you have on, it might be a guy or a lady that has on strong perfume or strong cologne. That one bee that's going to find out that smell is going to rack that person, or potential of stinging that person, and something happens. So just be a little bit aware of your surroundings, please. Some of the things you're going to need, you might need, and this is depending on what you're going to get into, you might need ladders, step stools. You're going to have extra frames or deeps, drawn comb, queen clips, that white sheet, I guarantee is a potential, a solid bottom board, telescoping cover. You might have to have a saw, tree loppers, pruners, duct tape, front entrance, barricade tape, or, in the most important part, is your safety. If you call somebody, some key words to ask: how high is the swarm? For me, I know 8 feet because I can stand on my flat feet, reach up and touch 8 feet. When you talk to homeowners, they'll say it's up in the tree a little bit. I've showed up. So ask key things that you're related to. Is it taller than your vehicle? Can you stand on the ground flat-footed and reach and think you can touch the colony? Because when you get there, all of a sudden the colony's 23 feet in the air and you didn't bring a ladder. Is it taller than a 1-story house? How high is the tree? Because I've had people call me and say, I have my whole property has pine trees all over it and this gigantic swarm. I showed up, every tree was less than 2 feet tall, and the swarm was the size of a baseball, because I didn't ask how big are the trees. So I showed up with a 20-foot extension ladder, all this stuff, and walked over and just picked it up, put it in the box, and walked away. The first thing to ask on this is the height of the swarm. Can you reach it? Ask the homeowner over and over and over, and it's not to be redundant. Has the colony been sprayed or dusted with 7 dust, or has it been sprayed with water or anything else? If it's been hit with wasp spray, 7 dust, anything like that, tell the homeowner, thank you very much, but please don't spray the bees, and absolutely refuse to get that swarm. Because if you go get that chemical on your gloves, not only the active ingredient, the inert part of that ingredient, and you come home and check your hives, now you're spreading that chemical all over your stuff. So I've told people that have sprayed the bees with hornet spray or dusted them with 7 dust that I'm refusing to come and get it. If somebody else wants to do it, that's fine. I will not do it. Ask how long it's been there. Don't be afraid of saying, the colony's going to stay there. If it swarms, it might hit a branch and it might stay there for 7 seconds. Honestly, it'll cluster, it'll break back apart and leave. I've had bees that have hung for 3 or 4 days that have went through an ice storm that the lady called me 3 days later and said, this colony's been hanging here. And I said, how long? She goes, they went through 2 ice storms the last 2 nights. It was early in the spring. Same kind of thing. Do you need a ladder? If the homeowner has a ladder, and I'm going to say this by experience, don't assume that it's nice ladder that's safe. These are usually ladders from some homeowners that are rickety. You go to climb up it and the whole thing's swaying back and forth. So take this at your own will of what you want to get. And always ask first if they've been sprayed and all the other stuff. If you're going to do this, just be prepared a little bit. Have this extra stuff, and you can do any of it. Techniques to open swarm. Once you get the colony inside the box, you're going to see the bees with their heads down like this, with their butts up, and her scent or her nasonoff gland here at the outside. That is the come hither smell of the colony. Once you get the bees to do this, the colonies will march. Actually, you could tell people that you have them trained and joke with them. The bees will walk right inside the box for you. It is the coolest thing in the world to watch. But you'll actually see the queen walk right inside. You can scoop them up with your hand and your glove. Use your bee brush. Brush them inside the box. Shake them inside. Once they start fanning and they all walk in, 90% of the time you got the colony. Everything's good. A trap out. I just got a phone call. So if you guys want to go on a trap out with me, I'll be setting that up here probably in 2 weeks. And I'll put out those dates and we can do a trap out. Very complex. It takes you about 2 weeks to get the bees out of like a brick home. I will not bust through brick. Number one, by the time you have a mason, you have to salvage the bricks. You have to get everything done. You're looking at $3,000, $4,000. So that I would do a trap out. This lady had an older home that I did a trap out on. This guy had a tree that was probably 500, 600 years old minimum, that I wasn't going to kill the tree or dig into the tree. So we did a trap out. This lady had a stone porch that I trapped them out of. It's another way of getting the bees out. You're going to get about 90% of the workforce out, and it's a heads or tails. You flip it up once. It's a heads or tails if you get the old queen out. 90% of the time you don't, but it varies. But it's another way if you have people that have bees inside of a building you can't get into, it's a park and recs, and somebody says, hey, I want the bees gone or I'm going to spray them, you can do a trap out. The thing with the trap out is, again, the height, different things you have to take. Number 8 screen, and what you do, you actually bend this into a cone so a number 2 pencil fits into the tip. That lets out drones. And what happens is you tape everything else off, close every part of the hive itself. The bees during the day, they crawl out the tip, they go out to forage. When they fly back, they hit down here at the bottom of the cone and they can't get back in. You have your box here with a frame of open brood or a little bit of honey. At night, they keep crawling into your box. So each day, there's more foragers that come out. At night, they crawl into your box. All of a sudden, they start to pull out their own queen here. After about 2 weeks, there's no more bees coming out. You have the entire colony here. Game over. You've got the entire colony and you're good to go. Like I said, the cone must be made of number 2 pencil. You tilt it upwards in about a 10-degree angle. If you face it down, they just won't come out the cone. You can tease them out with 1-to-1 sugar water, giving that colony or that starter nuke a little bit of time. It's time consuming for 7 to 14 days. And like I said, it's a 50-50 shot of getting the old queen to leave. A tear out, I have 2 of these. I have a 2-story home that the lady right now, at the fall of last year, she could take 2-quart jars, put them in her bathroom window, and honey was dripping out her window and out the ceiling, and she could fill up the 2-quart jars. The bees are from her basement all the way up to the 2nd story. And I think there's approximately 3 colonies that are living in the side of this house. So this is the most complex of all because you have to understand construction. You just don't take a Sawzall and start cutting into somebody's house because of electrical or plumbing. But if you guys want to do this kind of thing, I have one in a shed. The guy is kind of iffy about us tearing into it. I can do it from the outside. He doesn't want the inside destroyed. And then I have the 2-story home. If you guys want to go on something like that, you're more than willing to participate, climb up in. I take everything from tents, they're like 15 by 15 pop-up tents. We put tables out. You learn how to band brood. You learn how to turn on and check for the queen. You'll cut frames out. You'll do everything. Or you can just come and stand and just watch. So that's about the most complex because they have, and this is exactly what you'll see in a feral hive or in a house. You'll see this black nasty comb. So everything you do on a tear out, you have to check for diseases. Sometimes this will get old and they'll start a new colony somewhere else underneath the house. This is a house that was being abandoned. They were going to knock it down. I went in and removed all the bees. But you're talking about a bucket truck, pry bars, saws, chainsaws, and then you have to look for disease, comb, or both. This is a hive I got into that had American foul brood in it. So at that point, as soon as I looked into it, I seen snotty brood, decayed cappings. There was pinholes all over. We instantly just told the homeowner, burn it. I took a flamethrower, or like a propane tank flamethrower, and we just melted it out and killed it. So you have to be careful what you're getting into. Increases no matter what you do. If you're a seasoned vet beekeeper of 20 plus years, 5 years, 2 years, you still have to go back to the basics of what you guys are learning. If you catch a swarm and they're broodless, you can hit them with oxalic vapor or the dribble method. Place in a frame of open comb or open brood into the colony. That'll help them stay. Feed the colony because remember, they have nothing at that point. The better you feed them, the better you're doing, just like you're starting your nukes here next week or your packages. Feed 1-to-1 sugar water and a pollen substitute. And inspect the colony weekly. If you catch a swarm, you want to know that they're healthy. Look for K-wing, look for deformed wing virus and things like that. And then raise a queen from their brood. You can try and requeen it. You can do what you want from that. And evaluate. I mean, that is the most important thing. If I caught let's just say these were all swarms instead of nukes. If these were all swarms, this is the time to look and see. Do they have a good queen? Is she laying a good brood pattern? Are they healthy? Are they calm? When I pull up a frame of bees, I want them to walk on the frames in front of me and not running all over or going spastic or banging my veil right off the bat. And do they have a good buildup? And then make yourself kind of a scorecard that you kind of mentally put in. You know, it could be a 3-star system. Mine's a 5-star system. If they do all 5 things and they do it well, then I'll let them build up to a bigger 10-frame box and then build up from there. If the queen's no good, this is the time to kill the queen and requeen it. Or if there's 2 of these hives, 2 of these swarms that are bad, combine them together with the best queen, kill the other worker or the other queen off. So it's a way to turn on and have tons of extra resources. You're really spreading your name out there. I have a little gig that if you call me and I catch the swarm, I'll give you a jar of honey, which is a honey bear, and people eat it up. So any questions on that? And that's if you want to get into increases. I mean, you don't have to do it this year, but if you want to start doing that kind of thing, you have the time, money, and resources for it. You can increase and build yourself up. But remember that summer solstice. By July, you want to have everything kind of set into gold. And your mission in July, even though it's going to be hot and miserable, is winter prep. And we'll go through that. So by July, we're starting to prepare everything for the winter. Any questions?
I'll be glad when you put this video back on because I'm going to have to listen to this again. My brain is cooked.
Hey, Jamie,
Yes, sir.
I have a question that's somewhat related to today, but it's related to some stuff I've been reading from Kim Flautum on being queen stuff.
Yep.
He mentions, I thought that when you raised or when you had your queen, you did not want the drones that were in your apiary to mate with that queen, and because the queen goes out and goes to the designated area and mates with these others. But he was mentioning that you want to, now this was for queen rearing, and I understand that, but he was saying that he likes to control the drones as well to make sure the genetics are right. Do you do that in queen rearing, where you have like drones that you have raised and that they then mate with the queen that you have raised? I'm just curious.
Okay. Now, and for everybody else that's not following along with this, it's a very advanced question. So I'm going to answer this as simple as I can get. The stock that I raise every year that I want are my best queens, and I got 5 of them right now. They overwintered really well. The one has not that she has lived, but the colonies lived ever since I started this in I&I, which is artificial insemination or instrumental insemination for better. So I pick my best stock. Those queens that leave this from my house, I don't raise drones in around the house.
Oh,
So I kill all the drones off.
okay.
So I'll pick the tools out. I'll use the green drone comb to keep my mite low down, stick them in the freezer, whole 9 yards, and let it thaw out, put it back in for protein. My hives, if you drive around a mile, right around my house, about the mile and a half marker, you'll see all my boxes with orange straps on them. Those are all my drone or my honey producing colonies. The reason I use those are the ones that make me honey. Those are the ones I use the resources from to make my splits inside my yard. So what I'll do is I'll take a frame of brood from, let's say, down here on 66 and Flory. It's about 3/4 mile away. Those are not related. Any of those bees are not related to my queens in my queen rearing operation. Okay, so I don't want inbreeding.
Yeah.
So on the outside is Danny Slayball, Nina Bagley, Carmen is down south out here on Carpenter and Meekus. So I have all these out yards, and those are the best drones.
Oh,
So I use those for honey production, but I mostly use them for drones. So when the queen comes out and flies to mate, she will go past the one. Most of my drones, if I left drones here, drones only go out a half mile in every direction. Okay, so those are the ones right from my area. The queen, when the virgin queen comes out, she will fly at the 1 mile area past her own drones or her own area to get out to get to another DCA.
yeah.
The other DCA, those are the drones that I want to feed up. Those drones on my out yards, all the ones in the mile and a half, are ones that I leave the drones go. I let them feed up. I put sugar water out there. I do everything. So I have good vitality drones and DCAs. So my queens from here go out and meet with the X and the Y and the other chromosome. They're called alleles. And the alleles from all these other colonies are the ones that breed. And when my queen comes back, then she's outbred and she's not inbred.
Okay.
She goes and visits the other person in town.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when they go out, and when you do that, I mean, I do it myself because I'm flooding my area. I got 9 out yards around the outside. I mean, I have thousands and thousands of drones that are congregating somewhere along the edge of a woods, buildings, whatever, a change in the topiary or the topography, the topography of the ground. So I know my queens from my area go out. You can also do it with, let's just say on a GPS map, if I turn around and know, John, you're in the middle and you have a good queen rearing thing, and then I had Lisa on the outside and I had Beth on the outside and Gail on the outside, you could actually plan it by using GPS that, all these other out yards, or I could set up an out yard to run to have a mating area.
Okay.
Like we have for the pollinator sanctuary. The
Mhm.
pollinator sanctuary, I don't take my queen stock there because that's along the almost 2 mile area. So that way, if I take any new genetics there, it'll mate within that area. You follow me on that?
Yep.
Mhm. So in
So-
some aspects, you want your queen, so if whoever's in that radius, if they don't take care of their hives and they're not sustainable and good, you're not gonna
Exactly.
get good stock. You're gonna have issues.
Exactly. And for me, I don't want to do it by random and just go, okay, I hope that she'll go out and get a good flight. I set up all my out yards with the best drones of the best genetics I like. I like Nina Bagley because she has German bees. They're very dark, docile, big, gigantic queens. And they do a real good, they're docile for beginners. Danny Slayball has Italians, beautiful blonde bees, pull in tons and tons of honey. A little bit more aggressive. I mean, I'm not aggressive, but they run around a little bit more, but very docile. If I to run it all of a sudden in my drone yard, say I put in a Russian
Mhm.
and it off-bred with one of my Italians, I would still have some decent stock, but that's why I always analyze a nuke. If it's scary, if I open up a nuke and I'm scared to open up a nuke, then I shouldn't even let that queen be allowed to live. And I've had nukes that I've opened up that maybe she's crossbred with something I didn't know about, or maybe she's got outside my area of my drone yards that she went out and met. I open up the nuke and they come up and hit your veil, or they instantly, as soon as you pop the top, they jump off the frames and right at me. She gets one knock, and I put one grease pencil. On the second time, and I also look at the weather too. Did I cause that problem? Was it cold, wet, and rainy? But if it's sunny and everything and there's no reason for her to jump on me, if she gets a second knock, off with her head. And there's been beekeepers that have worked with me in the summer. They're like, you killed 18 queens today. And then I take them 18 queens, I put them in alcohol, and I make the queen lure or the QMP. But I don't let anything. I don't ever want to go back, and I never want to sell a nuke to a new beginning beekeeper the way I was. And Dwight Wilson, and please don't take this wrong, Dwight Wilson never did this to me on purpose, but he got 200 queens in a box, and he said pick 2, and I picked one on the left, one on the right. How did I know one had Africanized traits that got 7 boxes tall, pulled in tons of honey, but brutally in one of my gloves, and I'll show you a picture here in a little bit, from the tip of my glove to the forearm, and everybody knows how the bee gloves are, my wife and I counted 300 stingers.
Oh my.
That is scary. And the other hive, the little hive that only got 2 boxes tall, I used to just kind of take my gloves off real slow, and they would crawl across my hands. They never stung me. Loved them to death. So I want to make good bees that have a good honey product, that I can sell good quality genetics. They're raised in Ohio.
Mhm.
I control the genetics, and that when I turn on, my heart just absolutely just blows up when I hear people go, hey, I bought a nuke from you and she's living the 3rd year and she gets tons of honey and she's doing really good. I love your bees. That makes it feel good. I never want to hear, hey, Jamie, I bought this nuke from you and we had to put gasoline on it and kill it because it killed my kid or done something. So it's just doing your best product of what you're doing, having fun at it. And then, the more you learn, and there's going to be some of you, honestly, there's going to be some of you that are going to go, this is over my head. And don't be afraid to ask more questions, read more books, and get into this at your own pace, because I jumped right into queen rearing my 2nd year. And Dwight Wilson was nice enough to give me 10 full colonies and said, you know what? If they live, they live. They die, they die. Learn how to raise queens. Learn how to do stuff. Learn how to checkerboard. Anybody ever hear the story where you want to make your kid, in the olden days, I guess, I've never heard it current, but I did it once. You want to teach your kid to swim? You
Throw
want to
them in
teach
the
your kid to
water.
swim. And what'd you do with your kid? You walked over to the deep end, you threw your kid in, and you seen if they swim, if they can swim or not.
Mhm.
That's how I feel that Dwight Wilson did to me. I mean, I love him. I mean, if Dwight Wilson, honestly, if Dwight Wilson needed a kidney today, I would go to the hospital and give him my kidney if I could. But he threw me in by trial of fire. When him and I talk, he's constantly asking me. I mean, he does the Q&A with me all the time. Well, why did you do this and this on this genetics? Why did you do this, this, and this? He constantly. I mean, it's a constant game with him of who's smarter. And I know he knows the answers, but he's like, well, tell me why you did this, this, and this. But it challenges you all the time.
That it does.
And for those of you, there might be one or two of you that are going to get the bug. You're stung. And then the only thing you can think about is bees, bees, bees. What can I do? How can I manipulate them? What can I do? How can I raise queens and do that? And I was one of them kids. I was one of them guys. I just wish I would have found it when I was in 4-H at 12 and 13 years old, because I honestly do things for a 5-year rotation. If it's bored and I get bored with it, or it's something like I raised angelfish, we had 200 some odd 29-gallon aquariums. It's the same thing. You run done it. You done this. You done that. You done this. I started. We raised rabbits for 4-H when my girls were in thing. We
You should
started
have
out
raised. You should have raised betas. Just
I did
just like-
betas. I did betas. But we did rabbits, and
Oh
we
my
had
gosh.
we it's called a hutch, or what you put your bee or rabbits in. We had 450 rabbits. And at the end, my wife could pick them up and go, yeah, these have the perfect teeth, the perfect paws, the perfect this, the perfect hair. And we used to go out and win shows all the time. And my girls took champion or grand champion every year they were in 4-H.
Your neighbors gotta love you.
But they always loved me. But when you do it, it's just over and over and over and over and over. I do understand the breeding part of it, because you're breeding to get a better something. So on that side of raising queens, I really dug into that. But with bees, I mean, I could have two colonies side by side. They have the same forage, same water source. I do the same thing for them, and they act completely different. So for me, it's a challenge. Every day I wake up and go out my bees. I mean, I'm reading books. I'm getting old books now. I'm buying a lot of older books that cost like $300-400 a piece. Like Dewey Carlin. Dewey Carlin is what some of the original beekeeping of IA Root. So I read the old time stuff. I'd read the new stuff. So each individual person, you're going to have your own path. I just want to help you get the foundation laid out that you can have fun, have this be productive, make a little bit of money at, and something you can turn around and pass it on the next generation. Any questions about the rest of today?
Okay, so on the note of the next generation,
Yes, sir.
like Gail, I have colonies that have wintered through,
Mhm.
and I would like to do the split, but I don't,
Mhm.
I can't find the queen. And it terrifies me to kill the queen. I could kill the colony. I'm like, then I'd screwed everything up, and they were fine until I started messing with them.
When you do that, what to do with if you have an overwintered colony this spring? I mean, here by Thursday, I mean, it looks like everything's gonna be beautiful after that. And I thought I was going to be a week ahead until this cold snap. Is to find that old queen, let that colony get. I mean, the picture where you see it was overly populated and it's boiling.
Mm-hmm.
That's the time to take that colony and to duplicate her genetics. And what you're going to do, because you don't have, I mean, how many hives do you have?
There's two
Okay.
colonies.
Okay. What you're going to do, there's two pros and cons to this. The best thing is you're going to have half of her genetics or alleles for the 16 chromosomes that you're going to have for this next one. So you're going to turn around and let this colony build up to that 80-90%. You're going to make a split. That virgin queen that's going to go out is going to mate with whatever's in your area or your DCAs. It could be great. So you're going to try to get a great thing. Other times it could be wrong. So because each time, even if you buy a purebred today, and I buy a 100% Italian that I'm going to pay $800 for, When I open mate is what you're going to do. You're counting on the DCAs or the drones in that area to turn around and be good. Like Adam and Kathy. Adam and Kathy do not have a good DCA in their area because every time they do open mating in their area right now, the queens just don't come out and lay real well. So like you could take it out to the community apiary or say, hey, Jamie, can I bring them out to your house and set them in the backyard and use your DCA? So what you're doing, you're looking for genetics in other areas. Or if you know of somebody that has good genetics in their area, find a farmer or somebody and say, hey, can I put this nuke here for 4 weeks and let her go out and take a flight, do things that she needs to do, come back, start laying, and then make that. But it'll never be the 100% of the original queen you had, but the same genetic line. You're trying to keep that whole thing like having a Dalmatian. You still want a Dalmatian, but each dog after that's going to have a little bit different traits. So.
Oh Lord, this helped me any, Jamie.
I know.
I did try the Christmas tree thing that you said.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, because I went out to sea now because it's too cold.
Yep.
I got down to the brood box and put a frame of foundation and pulled a frame of brood up to see if they would bring it on up. So
yep.
Watching them the other day, there's 2 of them that are similar size. That one, the workers are going in and out. Now the other hive, which I haven't messed with, they were bearding on the outside, which makes me think that hive's probably full and probably need to do the same thing to it.
Well, and it's a good thing. What you do is each time you put a frame in this early season, I would only put 1 frame in between. What it does is the bees instantly see that as area that they have to draw this comb out ASAP. So when you pull that 1 frame of brood out and put in a frame of foundation, the bees knew at one point there was brood there. We need to pull this back out because the queen's going to walk on it. There's nothing there. It's like walking into a kitchen with no cupboards. As you open that up, now the bees are kind of thinning out a little bit, and it's giving them more area. So the brood up top that you pulled up top, right beside that brood that was there was brood, but now it's foundation. And it'll get them nurse bees and they'll start pulling out like crazy. If after Thursday, if I had a colony like that, what you could do is actually checkerboard. So you're going to take honey, foundation, pollen, foundation, brood, foundation, brother thing of brood, foundation, and actually break that whole entire colony up by breaking in, checkerboarding it with foundation on the whole entire box. So you're taking 1 full box of 5 or maybe 10 and breaking it into 20 with tons of foundation in it. But I wouldn't do that till Thursday until I knew I had at least 2 solid weeks of nice and sun and the overnight temperatures were up. And that's a way to make 1 big box, make it just explode into 2 make it explode into 2 gigantic boxes because you're thinning everything out. The reason you wouldn't do that now is these overnights being 30 degrees. If you have tons of foundation in between, then you're going to have these little tiny clusters. They're going to cluster on this frame of brood. They're going to have a thing of foundation that has dead airspace, and then another and another and another, and it's going to thin them all out, and you might kill the entire colony at that point.
So by doing that, I don't have to worry about whether I take the queen with the new box or she's in the old box. We just go.
Just go. As long as if after Thursday, I mean, I'm looking at the AccuWeather right here on screen 3. I would have no problem checkerboarding an entire box or 2 boxes with foundation in it. Because I know the next 3 weeks, the overnights are not supposed to get below 55. So minimum, they're going to cluster a little bit, but not that. It's not going to take tons of resources to do it. And they're going to build up like crazy. By Thursday, I'm going to promise you by Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the phones will light up for swarm season. Because all of these bees that only had 1 or 2 days in between, everything that I got into last week had eggs in the queen cups or a little bit of royal jelly. So by the time this cold snap, now they're trapped in for another 5 days that we can't do anything. We can't be in the bees, can't move them around. At the end of that, by the time the 7th to the 9th day, at the 9th day they're capped, these queens are going to pour out them front doors and the phones are going to light up. You're going to find them in town. You're going to find them in managed hives, feral hives. Yeah, swarm season's going to kick in ASAP. Oh, exterminators. If you know somebody that does exterminating, turn and call them and tell them you'll pick up the swarm. They think, the exterminators always say, and it's not, they say it's against the law to kill honeybees. Let them think that, because those guys will not spray it. They'll call a beekeeper before, but there's not an Ohio solid law. There's a recommendation not to kill honeybees, but it's not law. All the exterminators think there's a law somewhere, and I've never been able to find it yet. I've even talked to Ohio Department of Agriculture. They said it's highly recommended not to kill honeybees, but if there's somewhere potential, they can spray them and kill them. But it's a way. Call an exterminator. If you know somebody who does tree service, and they turn on cut down a tree and has bees in it, give them a business card and say, hey, if you give me a hive that I can get to, I'll give you a little thing of honey. Put your name out there as much as you can.
I have a question about queens.
Yes, Jen.
You know how you were looking for the queen? Would it have been better to, like, if for us even, just to mark our queen somehow? So I know they do it by color, by paint. I've been seeing some of that. Does that just make it easier to find, or?
The reason it was hard to find is because there was 3 and 4 layers of bees. When you start getting that many bees, I mean, there's an under layer that's hanging on and an over layer that's walking back and forth. Even the best guy, I even have a hard time. And when you see that boil, she could be anywhere in that mix. For me personally, I like to break all the boxes up. So I know she's only going to be in that box, and then just keep looking at that box, go through all, maybe say 4 boxes, go through all 4 boxes. If I find her on the last one, then I can take the other ones and do what I need to do. In a colony that's building up, usually the resources are thinned out enough that you can pick up a frame, and it's a single layer of bees that are walking across. When you look for a queen, you look for that. Imagine sitting on Cleveland Avenue Bridge and watching a boat going down the river. That wake that creates, that queen, when she walks through, is that wake of movement behind her that opens up. If you start looking at your frames, like a lot of you guys did great with the ones that were there. You instantly pointed out drones. You said, right there's no, that's a drone. When your eyes start picking up the difference between the size difference, you'll start easily picking out drones or queens. And when you have a colony that's building up slowly, it's really hard with an overwintered colony because there's just a massive amount of bees. And I told you guys, 90% of the time, where's she at? Brood area. And as soon as I left with you guys, walked back, she was on box 4 all the way in the honey super. So that means she had eventually, somewhere between me popping the boxes apart or smoking it a little bit, she was in that box. So you're going to find her easier. When we get all the hives out there, I want you guys to, I mean, and you're not going to kill, if you kill my queen, so what? I can raise 40 more next day. But we'll start getting, and we're going to have a whole class on that of just opening up the box. If it's a standard 1 or 2 boxes, I can usually find the queen within 5 minutes. But I know she's not 90%, let's say 99%. She's never going to be on the outside. So I can pull my first frame up quickly. I know when I start looking at brood, she's not going to be on capped brood. She's going to be in that open larvae or in that open larvae to egg area. So when I pull the frames up, once I start seeing eggs and open larvae, then I slow down. Then I start looking left, right, flip it, left, right, up, down. So I'm only scanning each side twice. As that frame's not, then I put it in that gap. I slide it to the front. I pull the next one. That queen's usually only on in a 10 frame box. She's only ever on those 5 frames in the middle. She might be in the upper box or lower box, but she's always going to be in those 10 frames. So 5 in the bottom, 5 in the middle, or excuse me, 5 in the middle on the top and bottom. And you can quickly assess that. And once you turn, I mean, it usually takes me maybe 3-4 weeks. I can pull up a frame and just go right across it and go, there's the queen. But what if she's taking her abdomen and laying an egg and shoving her butt down in? You'll look at that frame 3 and 4 times and never see her. I've went through entire boxes, top to bottom, and never seen the queen. And then go back through it the second time, and there she is walking across the frame. It's a little bit of a talent. But when you pull your frames up, scan your eyes nice and steady and slow, left to right, top to bottom. And if you start picking out drones, just start picking out drones first. Start getting your eyes adjusted to that size difference. Why does it look different? And then all of a sudden, when you start picking out queens, you'll pick them out left and right easily. And yes, you can mark them, but that is not 100% because if you have VHS or Varroa hygienic, where your bees are really hygienic, you'll take the paint marker and paint her that white, yellow, blue, green. And guess
They'll
what?
eat her off.
The bees will clean the back of her and take that paint right off.
Even when it's dry?
Yep.
Oh, jeez.
These ladies are neat and tidy. I've never seen anything like it.
Okay, here I got a synonym for you, or I can't remember what that. Will you raise good brood? Oh, good brood. YWYG or RB or RGB. This is 1 through 6. Yes. Will you raise good brood? This is 2 and 7. 3 and 8. 4 and 9. 5 and 0. Okay. The easiest acronym for this is Will you raise good brood? This is the color system. The year, the last digit of the year. So 2021, it will be white. 2017, yellow. 2013 or 18, red. 2014 or 2000, anything with a 4 or 9, green. And 0 and 5 or 5 and 0 is blue. So that's the queen breeders. That's the thing across the entire United States. They use the same thing overseas. Does anybody, what's the name? The sparklies on the shirts with you stitch them in.
Oh, bling?
Oh, not bling.
The jeweling stuff.
Sequins.
Okay.
Sure.
I had a lady, and this is no joke. She's in Northwest Ohio Bee Club. She takes the very, very small sequins, takes number 2 tight bond glue, holds her queen, puts it on, and uses emerald colors of each one of those colors and puts it on. And she says when she picks up the frame and the sunlight hits it, the bling just pops and she sees her queen every time. But I have numbers. There's a little number system you can buy. Man Lake, they didn't sell them. The same kind of little numbers, but the bees will pick the numbers off. So it's not 100%. And if you get too much glue on her, you actually cover up the QMP. And this is you can ask my wife. The number and the thorax was sitting in the bottom of the hive, and her front wings and stuff were gone. And Dee goes, "Hey, I see this little orange number 5 at the bottom." And I said, "That's queen number 5." And she goes, "No, there's a number 5." And I said, "What do you mean number 5?" Her number 5 with her thorax, her abdomen and her head were gone. So never say that something's 100% in beekeeping. Never say that, yes, this guy does it and I can do it too. And don't compare yourself to people in Cincinnati. I mean, for us, Findlay up to about Hillsdale, that's our little micro environment. So anything that's happening from about Fort Wayne, mid Fort Wayne on the other side, all the way over to Sandusky, that's about our micro environment at what goes on. So we know what kind of weather comes in. Even the weather's a little bit different, but when they talk about forage, local honey, that's all our little bit of a micro environment.